Let's talk about joint health and specifically joint instability. So, a big pillar of having healthy joints is having joints that are stable enough to support whatever you're doing. And this is a big topic for me because I've struggled with hypermobility all my life. What is hypermobility? Well, it's when your joints are looser than they're supposed to be. And you often see it with people who have knees that kind of bend past a straight line. Well, I don't have that. So I never realized that I have hypermobility until much, much later. But I've always had a super flexible back. And so I could always not just touch my toes, but I can always put my whole palm on the ground with my legs straight. And so that was always impressive to people somehow. And it was like, I was usually the most flexible person in the room when it came to like hamstring flexibility. Well, much later, I realized that the flexibility wasn't coming from my hamstrings. It was coming from my lower back and my pelvis. And my joints were the ones that were loose, and my hamstrings couldn't fire at the right time. And so I ended up actually injuring my hamstrings because I couldn't feel when to stop my range of motion. So much, much later, I realized this issue was an issue. But I certainly, definitely like middle school, high school was like the most flexible kid in the room. And it was like impressive. So I like was like, great, I'm a flexible kid. Like didn't think anything of it. But ultimately, like, and then actually I started yoga at 18. I started taking yoga classes, and another boost of confidence for me was when I walk into a yoga class, I'm good at yoga. So all the yoga teachers would like pay attention to me and were like super excited that they can get me into these crazy poses. And of course, I didn't do anything to sort of train them. I just was like good at touching the ground with my whole palm, or like putting my palms behind my legs when my legs are straight. Like that was so easy. I was like, what's the big deal? And then, of course, going backwards, back bends at the time, I could do any back bend that they asked of me, but I didn't know how to stabilize my back. So that was very short lived because my back immediately got stiff because it was like, you're going to ask me to bend backwards and you're not going to fire any muscles to support me. Like, what are you doing? Yes, I talk to my back a lot like this, but basically like my back was not stable. And so me asking my body, my back to bend in all of these directions in yoga classes or in gym class or wherever, ultimately led me to having a really, really stiff back because my back would send signals to my brain like, hey, send the muscles to support me to fire, right? So the muscles would grip and try to stabilize my back and pelvis. And this continued like my whole life. I still struggle with this. The issue of my joints being unstable and loose didn't go away. I just now know how to deal with it. But ultimately, when you have joint laxity, loose joints, hypermobile joints, you're going to have joint stiffness because you're going to end up, your muscles are going to start gripping, trying to hold on to this loose structure. And the more you ask of your body, the more you move, the more stiff you're going to get in a sense with this kind of issue that I have, hypermobility, because you're going to be like, oh my God, I need to stabilize. So joint loose joints is typically a very straightforward path to injury. Again, aside from being, a few party tricks of flexibility, I couldn't figure out where I am in space. So the proprioception that I had, like the feeling of where my body is in space, was not great. So I could not, again, if I'm stretching, I couldn't figure out when to stop. So I would end up injuring my joints, or I actually tore a hamstring doing that, and I ended up injuring my nerve. I got sciatic pain, which is shooting pain down my leg through the sciatic nerve. So it was like, that flexibility wasn't real. It wasn't worthwhile, and it wasn't supported by my joints or my muscles. So joint laxity and looseness are also tightly coupled with a lack of proprioception, because your joints need to know where is their end range of motions. And if they're unstable, you might go beyond that and quickly injure yourself. And so I definitely have had injuries pretty much in every joint in my body. I don't have hypermobile knees, for example, but I've certainly, that little bit of lack of proprioception, I can always go a little bit beyond where I should be, and I would get all of these little chronic injuries. I mean, my knees, my ankles, I would roll my ankle like when I was in high school. I mean, rolling my ankle was like my job. Like I would roll my ankle all the time. Didn't even think twice about it because it was just like, oh, who cares? I rolled my ankle. Like who thinks like that? But that was me. Definitely back pain. Definitely was like noticing that. But rolling my ankle was just like, oh yeah, here goes Elena with her rolled ankle. Like I didn't even pause for that one. My thumb joint, I've dislocated my thumb plenty of times, training wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Got a foot injury from ballet, just kind of like doing point work. I had a very nice flexible big toe joint that now has stiffened up and got arthritis because I pushed it too far. So it's just like a story of my life where I push my joints a little bit far and then they develop this arthritic change, it's called, because it's like the body starts sending more tissue to that area because it gets like inflamed and overstretched, and then it starts to try to stiffen up so that it's kind of like a mechanism to stabilize that joint. So I definitely have arthritic change in my lower back. Unfortunately, my big toe joints, which hurts like hell, and other parts of my body, my fingers started to develop it from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It was just like arthritic change is kind of like par for the course because your body's like, okay, you're not going to use muscles to stabilize yourself. You're not going to prevent your joints from overstretching. So I got to do something. And so this is me having a conversation with my body. And my body is telling me, well, if you're not going to take care of me, I'm going to send tissue to surround your joint to protect it, which is going to lead to arthritic change and stiffness and lack of mobility. So ultimately, being hypermobile is kind of like a direct path to being stiff and immobile. And I've experienced that in my lower back. So my lower back, I in my 20s started to develop a lack of ability to extend my back because I did so many back bends in yoga and in my early 20s that I ended up kind of injuring the area, and now like lower back mobility is actually an issue rather than something of a gift. And then proprioception and just kind of like having an issue of where I am in space has always been a struggle of like learning new skills because it just doesn't come naturally. Like I have to take a little bit of an extra step to figure out where I am with my body. So moving well is something that I think about all the time because I have this issue. So it's like if it came naturally to me, if I didn't have joint problems, if I didn't have issues with my proprioception, I would probably learn a little bit quicker and wouldn't struggle so much to figure things out. And therefore, I wouldn't pay as much attention and I wouldn't break everything down to such detail. So this is why ultimately, having hypermobility has taken me on this journey of figuring out my body mechanics, my proprioception, the details of how to learn movement, and how to improve my quality of life through movement. So I never stopped moving, even though I experienced a ton of nagging injuries, chronic pain, joint stiffness. That has been just throughout my life, almost a daily something I've had. But I never let it stop me. So I just kind of kept going and moving past it because that is something I innately knew is, I can't afford to stop moving because if you stop moving, if you've ever experienced that, sometimes you like take a rest day and you think, okay, this is good. And then you end up like hurting yourself, like injuring your back more. That's totally me. Like I would be training 6 days a week. I'd take the day off, which I'd be like, okay, I'm resting today, not doing anything. Sit on the couch, get up off the couch. My back is out, threw my back out. And then I'm like, what happened? I was trying to rest. This happens more than I could count. So kind of making that connection of don't stop moving, even if it's recovery, especially when there is a joint issue. So again, my joints require a little bit extra care, which means taking extra care to do a warm up, rotate my joints to allow synovial fluid to flow through them, to mobilize them so they don't get stiff. So that feeling of stiffness, I found a way to combat it through a thorough warm up, which is not a cardio warm up. It is a joint warm up with joint rotations. So there's that kind of foundational piece, but also just how I approach movement. I have had to think about and really become very, very in tune with how I move so that I don't injure myself accidentally. Because literally, for me, for my joints, for my unstable joints, a literally millimeter difference will throw my back out. So my SI joints, my sacrum would pop out of place all the time, like every month probably. Around my period, it would like just pop out of place. I'd have like, one-sided lower back pain all the time. And it wouldn't be like one side or the other. It was like switch sides sometimes. It wasn't like a specific issues because it would just kind of be a little bit unstable. And so if I moved funny, especially during a certain time of the month where I had a little bit of extra hormone flowing through my body, and I did an extra twist, I bent down funny to pick up my keys, something like that. And it would just like flare up and the muscles around again. So when the joint is unstable, the muscles around it try to come in and help and stabilize. And of course they seize up. And that's where that pain, that stiffness, that kind of muscle spasm starts, right? So the muscle spasm in my back would be the result of the SI joint being like kind of moving a little bit more than the body would like. And so the muscles are like, oh, hold on. And so it's like hip pain, back pain, thighs, sciatic pain, and then like the rest of the body cascades out to shoulder pain, knee pain, ankle, and so on. My point being that this was in a way a blessing because I learned so much about biomechanics and movement as a result. I know how to learn. I can think through every single detail and become aware of it and implement it because I was able to move past this limitation and train the sports I've always wanted to train. I'm able to participate in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and I'm able to participate in ballet, which are all like really high impact, ballistic sports and activities, dance, unpredictable, also kind of intense. So the joint instability in no way stopped me, but it did slow me down for me to figure out what is the best path forward for me and my body to figure out this movement. So there's no movement pattern that's off limits for me. It's more about how do I approach this so that I don't hurt myself. So one thing is, I won't do a group fitness class where the primary goal of that group fitness class is for me to do as many reps as possible of an exercise because I need to be really in tune with what I'm doing and really aware of what my body is doing and pushing my body past its limit in a group fitness class. I won't do it because it's a direct path to injury for me. Because that's when basically somebody yelling at you, keep going, one more rep, pain is weakness leaving the body. Those messages, right? They override my awareness of where my body is in space and how my joints are doing. And if I need to like pay extra attention to stabilizing my lower back by activating my multifidi, like all of the stuff, like I need to intellectualize and like kind of become aware of, be conscious of when I'm performing a movement, can get overwritten by somebody yelling at me to keep going and do more because I'm super competitive. So like, I'm gonna do more and then I'm gonna, do the best in class and then be the most flexible, do the most reps, whatever. And then I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna be out of commission for a week because I threw my back out because I didn't pay attention to what my back needed. So it's not that any movement is off limits for me. Absolutely not. It's that how I approach movement is informed by me having, taking extra care of my joints, Me having loose joints means that I have to take extra care of them and be aware of what I'm doing. And it cannot be in a setting where somebody's telling me to override that. I will not do it. Now that I know, now that I know better. Of course I did it plenty of times. That's how I know it's a mistake for me. So I had to make that mistake many, many, many times for me to then finally realize, like, no, group fitness class is not an appropriate setting for me and my loose joints and my lack of proprioception that I had to fight really hard for to keep and grow. So what does this mean for you? Well, the reason why I pay so much attention to hypermobility is because during pregnancy, especially during pregnancy, women will have hypermobility just imposed on them through a hormone called relaxin that is literally prepping the pelvis for birth. So relaxin is a hormone that loosens the joints when someone is pregnant. And so if you're pregnant, your body is changing in so many ways, right? And one of those ways is like, okay, the body is preparing in 9 months. How are we going to get this baby out? Well, through the pelvis. So the pelvis has to be loose enough for the baby's head to pass through. That means that the sacrum needs to move out of the way. That means the pubic symphysis might need to kind of spread out. And it's like loosening your pelvis, already starting at the time of the beginning of pregnancy. And I think it peaks around 12 weeks. On average, of course, it's different for everybody. But that hormone starts to course through your body. And so you're guaranteed to have loose joints through pregnancy and postpartum. Because postpartum, apparently, I'm still in it. If you're breastfeeding, you still kind of have a little bit of that joint laxity because that reflex to let the milk out is also part of that necessary loose tissue that is required so relaxin is still coursing through your body. So the point is that even if you don't have hypermobility, and it's actually something that's super undiagnosed for people, so I didn't realize I have this until I went through all my degrees and all the PTs and everything. I didn't realize it right away, of course. And some have like a more pronounced form of it. I don't. So I don't have, knees that are super bendy or whatever. And my thumbs and my fingers aren't super bendy. It's just my lower back. So it's just like kind of unnoticeable. But my point is that, first of all, it's not diagnosed for a lot of people. And there's probably a higher prevalence of having loose, unstable joints, particularly in women, that we just don't know about. But then, pregnancy and postpartum, you're guaranteed to have loose, unstable joints. You're guaranteed to have this issue. So hypermobility, even if it doesn't occur, in an earlier life, if you get pregnant, you're going to experience some degree of joint laxity. And with pregnancy, you will also experience a lack of proprioception. So your proprioception will have a hard time keeping up with your changing body and the looseness of your joints. You will no longer know, where's my end range of motion? So it's like overstretching is likely to happen if you're kind of doing your regular activities and then you're like, oh, I used to be able to do this, no problem. And then, you pop a joint out of place, like an SI joint or a knee. Knees pop out of place in pregnancy. There's all sorts of studies on this. As a result of relaxin coursing through your body. This in no way means that you are limited from movement. It just means we need to take extra care of your unstable joints. So the recommendation that you get pregnant, you go to the OB and they say don't lift more than 20 pounds, sort of comes from this idea. But obviously it's super misguided because me not lifting 20 pounds in no way helps me stabilize my joints. It's the opposite. It prevents me from kind of being brave in my movement and pursuing kind of good quality movement. By you telling me don't lift more than 20 pounds is, it just doesn't make any sense. But that is where it comes from, because it's like if you lift a lot of weight, you're going to hurt yourself because your joints are unstable. Well, let's talk about stabilizing your joints, because you don't have to again, I've had this issue my whole life. So, and I've been able to lift a lot more than 20 pounds throughout my life. I adore weightlifting. This is something that's a huge part of my life. So, like, the answer is we need to stabilize your joints. The answer is not stop moving and don't lift over 20 pounds. But the bottom line is why I'm telling you about joint health and hypermobility is that in some form, you have likely experienced it. It is just super subtle and easy to miss. But if you pay a little extra attention to warming up your joints, not just warming up your muscles, warming up your joints, activating the muscles around your joints to stabilize your joints, and then taking extra care to become aware of where your body is in space and taking a little extra care on paying attention to your body mechanics to ensure that you are working cohesively and that your joints aren't going out of place or just kind of placed funny that is promoting an injury. So those three things, a nice joint warm-up, a nice muscle activations for stability, and then being aware of your body mechanics, those three things are going to allow you to do whatever you want. It's just like something that we need to pause and reset, especially pregnancy and postpartum. Again, a lot of people have hypermobility they don't know about, but I guarantee you, if you've gone through a pregnancy, that you have experienced this. And so those random aches and pains, the joint laxity and just overall tissue laxity actually through pregnancy is something that's like necessary for the body to grow a human and then like deliver that human. But we can like work with that. It's not a sentence of like forever you will have low back pain because now you are a postpartum mom, you know, it's not a requirement for you to have joint pain and stiffness. But let's talk about where it's coming from. There is a clear reason of why you're experiencing the joint pain, the stiffness, the shooting pain down your leg, the sciatica, the hip pain, the low back pain, the neck pain, maybe the knee pain, right? It's like so many ways it can manifest itself, but it's there for a reason, again, because of childbirth or pregnancy and you know, preparing for delivery. And there's a ton we can do about it. So this is why I'm connecting the dots for myself and for you, because I've struggled with this my whole life. This isn't something that's new to me because of pregnancy. I've definitely experienced it in pregnancy, and it certainly got worse. And I certainly experienced a very loose pelvis during pregnancy and postpartum, and it's took me out of commission. Like I've gone through it, and I know how to fix it. I know how to fix it because there's those three steps. Figure out how to warm up your joints to prevent that stiffness, stabilize the muscles around the joints to support your structure, and then become aware of your body mechanics. The technique how do you pick up something off the floor, and how do you perform the movements in your exercise class? So if you do a class on YouTube, or if you're doing a class, it's a group fitness class in person, you are potentially being told to push past a certain limit. This is where you need to turn on your body awareness to become aware of like, actually, I need to slow it down and focus on my lower back stability in this particular exercise and not go past a certain point, because that's ultimately what leads to injury. So there's a clear path for us all to thrive in our favorite activities pain-free. We do not have to be in pain because of loose joints, because of joint laxity. Joint laxity does come along in pregnancy, and for some of us, it's just a lifelong thing. But it is certainly not a limiting factor in anything you want to pursue. And pain is not a requirement for you to suffer through it. It's just not. There's a ton you can do. And I have gone through this whole journey, and I feel like I'm coming full circle because I've looked at all the paths for me, because I was not going to let this stop me. And so when I became pregnant, I knew that this is my life's mission, because I knew that, you know, the messaging that I received is this is just part of pregnancy. You're just going to have to suffer through it. Your pubic symphysis pain is normal, blah, blah, blah. And then postpartum, oh, just give yourself time. It's not about giving yourself time whatsoever, because giving yourself time and taking rest, you're going to end up sitting around, not being active, not being mobile. You're going to get stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. And possibly it's going to lead to even arthritic change. And so that's not the path. The path is moving more, but moving with intention, becoming in harmony with your body, being aware of what your body needs, finding stability in your joints. Then you can do whatever you want, because you're going to be out of pain, you're going to be moving, you're going to be active, and you're going to be thriving. This is what it's all about for me.